I really needed time to let this sink in. I started writing this script about 3 months ago, and I needed to step back, rethink everything, and do some rewrites. Am I stupid? Is Dawntrail secretly some masterpiece that I fail to see? Or was the disappointment that I felt justified? I usually try to keep things spoiler free, but this is a case where I have to get into spoilers to prove my point or back up any statements that I make. So this will be your spoiler warning. All that time I spent reflecting on Dawntrail's MSQ, I kept coming back to the same conclusion. Dawntrail is disappointing. There are some good bits though. We were introduced to new zones that are vibrant and reflect real life Latin American cultures, dungeons that are engaging and challenging, music that'll be stuck in your head for the next few months until it is available for streaming and purchase, and plenty of Final Fantasy IX Easter eggs that did put a smile on my face. But let's not forget that a good portion of Final Fantasy XIV players are primarily here for the story, me included. So it's disheartening to say that everything good about Dawntrail is outside of the main story. So what went wrong? First, I should acknowledge two things. First being our expectations. The stakes were high in both Shadowbringers and Endwalkers, and acted as a conclusion to a story 10 years in the making. Dawntrail was never going to reach those same heights, since it's a new beginning for a new saga. The second acknowledgement is regarding Natsuko Ishikawa, the lead writer for Shadowbringers and Endwalker. Sources say that she either took on a supervising role for Dawntrail, or she stepped away from the lead writing position. Regardless, Dawntrail would not have the same quality that we know Ishikawa to bring. But that doesn't mean you can't write a good story. I found there to be 3 problems with Dawntrail's story: pacing, uneven screen time amongst its characters, and an imbalanced tone. Let's start with the pacing. I normally don't complain about pacing in any storytelling medium unless it's super lengthy or incredibly fast. In the case of Dawntrail, it is unnecessarily long. There were plenty of moments in the story that should have been trimmed down, and others felt like they were just shoehorned into the MSQ to pad out the game time. Shalawani is a prime example. What should have been a short introduction to a small town and its people ended up turning into a Western filler anime arc that lasted about 1 to 2 hours. Also, Dawntrail does have a lot of dialogue, and I do mean a lot. If you're familiar with the phrase show don't tell, well, I can tell you that Dawntrail does the exact opposite. Everything about Yogg-Toroll's history, tribes, and cultures is explained directly to you. Let's compare this to the visual storytelling of prior expansions. The economic divide in Ishgard, Garlemald's stronghold in Kugane, Norverdant's introduction where it's permanently daytime. For those 3 examples, we do receive context behind them later, but we can still make educated guesses based on our first glance. With all this extra dialogue, you think that every character present gets a meaningful amount of screen time. No. I like to think that Dawntrail has 3 main protagonists: Wuk-Lamat, Krile, and Erenville. I know a lot of players complain that the Warrior of Light is not the main hero in the story. Allow me to go on a small tangent as to why I'm mostly okay with this. What does it mean to be the Warrior of Light? We've taken down tyrannical governments and prevented world-shattering cataclysms. The world doesn't need a Warrior of Light as of right now. Or at least for the first half of Dawntrail. We'll get to that. But also, did anyone else notice that Nobody calls you the Warrior of Light in this story? Or did I miss it? Anyways, with the Warrior Light being sidelined, you think that means our three main leads get meaningful depth and character development. Not entirely. Instead, Wooklamot hogs up all the screen time, with Krile and Erenville becoming relevant in the last 1 to 2 hours of the story. Why is Wooklamot so important? She is the reason why we, the Warrior Light, are here in Yogg-Thorol. She needs our help in a competition so that she can become Dawn Servant, which is the equivalent of Hokage or President. She wants to be her father's successor and lead her people. But we find out very quickly that she is not fit for a leader position, but neither is her competition. There's her foster brother, Zoralja, who wants to lead with might and military prowess. The second foster brother, Kona, who wants to introduce technology and ingenuity. And then there's Bakul Jaja, who is just an asshole. So where does that leave Wooklamot? She wants peace. When she says peace, I think she specifically means that she wants the people, her people, to be happy and live a stress-free life. Okay, but how do you plan to do that? That's the problem with all of our contestants. They have an end goal in mind, but they don't know how to get there. But this competition will give them all character growth, right? Wrong. Even after becoming Dawn's servant, Wooklamot is still naive and overly optimistic. But at least her loyalty is admirable. Kona is an interesting case. He eventually learns that some people reject his ideas of technology and its convenience in fear that they would lose culture and tradition. But with Kona now sharing the role of Dawn Servant with Wooklamot, he may have the authority to just ignore all that and do what he pleases. But Kona does come off as a bit too diplomatic for that, so I think he'll respect their wishes. Bakul Jaja has some form of a character arc, but I'd say that the execution was mediocre. There was an attempt to make Bakul Jaja a sympathetic villain, but with his repeated attempts to cheat his way to victory, which includes blackmail, thievery, and ambushing, you're not getting my trust or forgiveness anytime soon. Then there's Zoralja, who is a sore loser and still seeks authority and power, and would eventually become one of the villains in the second half of Dawntrail. And it's also in the second half of Dawntrail we get introduced to Sphene. Sphene is a queen of her own kingdom and shares similar goals to Wooklamot. She wants her people to be happy. How does she do it? She steals the souls from other dimensions so that her people can continue living. Finally, somebody who can help Wooklamot realize what it means to be in a position of authority. What morals are you willing to abandon? What sacrifices are you willing to make? What devious actions are you willing to take? All for the sake of your people's well-being. But none of that is explored. If there was an opportunity for Wooklamot to have some semblance of character growth or reflection, this was it. Also, let's just think about Sphene's plan for a moment. She wants to merge reflecting worlds together so that her people can continue living. I am willing to believe that this was accidental, but the few similarities Sphene does have with M itself does make her look a bit unoriginal. Compare this to Zeno, Nidhogg, and Fandaniel, who all had different motivations and stand out because of it. Give it some time and the consensus will determine how memorable or effective of a villain Sphene was. Maybe my own opinions will change too. In our final pursuit to stop Sphene, we enter Living Memory. This is where Krile and Erenville's story finally takes center stage. Oh, and the Scions are here too. I actually forgot that they've been here the whole time. What does Alphino, Alize, Ishtola, Thancred, Urianger, Graha, and Estinian contribute to this overall narrative? I don't know. Back during the trials to become Dawn Servant, the Scions were split amongst Team Wuklamat and Team Kona, meaning we should be competing against each other. I was expecting this to be a Fate Zero kind of scenario where people's personal ideologies on politics clash, resulting in violent conflict. I absolutely see a scenario where Alphino leaves Wuklama to join Kona, believing that his wits and education are better suited for the role of Dawn Servant. Then this might lead to a brawl between Alphino and Alize, and that would ruin their bond. The possibility of losing friends and allies that we made over the course of a 10-year-long saga would have added stakes that we, the player, needed to become invested in. Otherwise, we're being asked to be emotionally invested in this part of the world that's brand new to us. The sentiment is not there yet, but the possibility of some of these characters cutting off ties with us, to which we would then need to rebuild those relationships later, maybe in another expansion, is an opportunity to further flesh out the Scions. Or maybe those severed times would have been rebuilt over the course of Dawntrail's second half. It is interesting how Dawntrail's second half parallels to the first half. Just as we did in Yok'Torol, we met the people of Alexandria and learned how they live, even some of their history. The thematic similarities I can appreciate, but I also can't help that the recycling of this idea contributes to the feeling that Dawntrail's main story is lasting a bit longer than it needs to. It's a double-edged sword. But the biggest difference is learning how Yok'Torol thrived and overcame conflict, whereas Alexandria is learning to survive by creating conflict. There's also a stark contrast with the leaders of these two nations, Wuklama and Sphene. Wuklama is incredibly honest and loyal, whereas Sphene is gentle but secretive. We would eventually learn of Sphene's motive and her partnership with Zoralja. Oh, and apparently Zoralja has a son, which might be explained in the next patch. Anyways, with Sphene becoming a threat to multiple realities, the world now needs the Warrior of Light. And yet Wuklama continues to hog up all the screen time. Oh, and the Scions are here too. Hi, Krile! As I said earlier in the video, Dawntrail has 3 protagonists, Wuklama, Krile, and Erenville. It won't be until we enter Living Memory that Krile and Erenville get their proper time in the spotlight. Despite all my gripes with Dawntrail up to this point, I will say that the atmosphere is still top-notch, and Living Memory may have some of the best atmosphere in Final Fantasy XIV so far. This place is both joyous and whimsical, but also melancholic at the same time. This is an afterlife for those who passed away in Alexandria, where friends, family, and lovers reunite. And unfortunately for them, you need to end their blissful afterlife. The souls that Sphene is collecting from other realms is what fuels Living Memory. This new life for the dead requires stealing life from the living. Unfortunately, despite the phenomenal setup, the conclusion to Krile's and Erenville's story arcs are incredibly lacking. Starting with Krile, it is here in Living Memory that she meets her biological parents for the very first time. And how do they make up for so many years apart? Dead silence. Now, I understand that in Krile's situation, there are dozens to hundreds of questions she would want to ask her parents, with the first being, where do I start? More specifically, what do I want to ask first? But I don't understand how this justifies the awkward silence between them that lasts a whole 20 to 30 minutes. Somebody needs to break the ice. And eventually, somebody does. And it's done in one of the weirdest ways possible. Grahatia eating an ice cream.
Raha? Oh.
What is he doing?
I'm getting emotional whiplash here, but this is supposed to be a bittersweet reunion for Krile, and maybe a tear-jerking moment for us, the audience. But now I think they want us to laugh at Graha's antics? I'm sorry, but this killed the vibe for me. I had tears ready, but instead, I died of cringe. I thought I was gonna come out of this saying at least Dawntrail has a good third act, but instead, this was a sign of more disappointment to come. We then move on to Erenville, who has been quiet ever since we've entered living memory. And it's not just because he's an introvert, it's because he has not accepted his mother's passing. And I don't blame Erenville in the slightest. He finally comes home only to learn that his mom died years ago in his absence, and who is keeping it a secret from him even after his return. And now here he is in living memory where he needs to end her second life. Erenville hardly gets a reunion with his mom. He doesn't even get time to grieve. For the entire time we've known Erenville, he's been very calm and stoic. This was an opportunity for him to show some real emotion, to break down and let out his frustrations, maybe even walk away from everything, refusing to let his mom die permanently, knowing that he wouldn't be able to make up for the lost time between them. Even if he is the one to put his mom to rest, I would think that he would still want to ask for some time alone to reflect on the whole situation. Yeah, I agree. Instead, Erenville gets a few angry words and quickly accepts his mom's death. This was all in the same cutscene.
How delightful this has been. Not since my journey with the Dawn Servant have I enjoyed myself so. No, I'm selling it short. This was even better. And that's because I was able to share this adventure with my darling boy. Well, this is as far as I can go. As for the rest...
Just stop. You're doing it again. Deciding everything by yourself, and then disappearing.
But now that brave souls have appeared to whom I might entrust my mission, I may finally embrace the end. Can't you be happy for me?
How could I be happy? As you wish, Mother. I'll continue what you began.
I know I edited this down to save time, but trust me, this was the same cutscene, and my point still stands. We once again have a moment that's meant to be an emotional gut punch, but the tension is ruined because now we're just rushing to the conclusion. By this point, I was mentally checked out. I thought I would be able to at least say that Dawntrail had a good ending, which is what I say about Realm Reborn. But I can't this time. Not for Dawntrail. There have been far too many missed opportunities for good storytelling. This could have been a narrative with themes of leadership, morality, pride, and legacy. At most, we have a family drama with messages about accepting death, which conceptually is a good enough start, but the execution of what we got just didn't land for me and so many others. Allow me to give you an anecdote. Trust me, this will be relevant. I remember one time I was eating a salad. That salad had onions in it. That onion was so potent that I could not taste anything else. Not the dressing, not the tomatoes, not the croutons, nothing. Just onion. Unsurprisingly, I lost my appetite. For me, Dawntrail was that onion, and I slowly lost my desire to log in and continue playing. The most fun I've had since Dawntrail's release is leveling up the new Viper and Pictomancer jobs outside the MSQ. And reigniting that passion I once had for this game is slow. Other than just taking a break from the game, I decided to go back and play the past expansions. But I'm not alone this time. Allow me to plug in my second channel, Level Up, where myself and my co-host talk about things we enjoy and new video game experiences. So far we have 2 episodes, one for A Realm Reborn, and another about our favorite video games of all time. If you are interested, I also recommend you check out our community tab, where I also post upcoming topics, including Heaven's Ward and TV shows like Survivor. These videos are in a podcast format, so feel free to use them as background noise. And even for this second channel, there will be a day where I will revisit Dawntrail for it. It won't be anytime soon, but it will eventually happen. And when it does, we'll see if any of my opinions change. But for now, Dawntrail is an onion that killed my appetite.